Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Amber with Helping the Good People here in Tucson. This video is a personal video. It is a little insight into my story. I am a survivor of domestic violence. I am a survivor of rape. I am a survivor of sexual abuse, childhood trauma. And this is my story. For those of you guys that are new, welcome to my channel. I'm not sure how you found me, but I'm grateful that you're here. And thank you to the new subscribers who don't know me. And welcome back to everyone who has followed me and supported me all of these years. Back in 2017, I started this channel mainly because my kids were taken from me. And I found this to be the only way to not only talk about domestic violence, but also to give them an outlet to keep tabs on me, so that way they could see me. So they could, I put it as, you can watch mommy work. Back in 2017, I also got invited to an open mic after being depressed for 4 years, sitting on my couch, crying, and whatever else, I got an invite to go listen to music, and I finally agreed to going. That in turn spurred on all the music that you see. These are all my friends that you see me recording, and the music and my friends, even the ones still around today, are the reason why I sit here. They're the reason why I am alive. I know that sounds funny, but for those of you guys that have been in depression before and found a positive outlet, can relate. Bear with me as I get through this message. I'm not sure how long the video will be. This is the second time I've tried recording it, so we will see how it comes out this time. The last one didn't go so well, so I'm not going to post it. But anyhow, like I said, my name is Amber, and I'm here in Tucson, and this is my story. Back in 2006, I went to a party at my friend Dennis's house. And during that party, I had invited Jake and Sally's dad, Michael, over to Dennis's house. Now, mind you, Michael and I go back to 1998. I was working as an entertainer at Curves Cabaret here in Tucson from 1998 until 2006, and then I retired for a little while and went back in 2015, and then I stayed for a couple more years, and then I officially quit in 2017. So that is how long that I've known my ex, Michael. I invited him to the party, and after 6 years or so of talking to him and dancing for him at the bar, never hanging out with him, I never met his kids, I finally agreed to having him come over to the house. So I called him up. That night we had a barbecue. There was a pool there, so Marissa, my daughter, was running around. Here she is, 7 years old, and we were drinking, smoking a lot of pot, doing our thing or whatever we do. And mind you, this was in 2006. So we're hanging out at the party. I had had a lot to drink. And before the night was over, I had blacked out. I don't know if I had too much to drink or what. Looking back now, I believe in the bottom of my heart, after talking to my therapist and going over details in my mind, that I think that I was drugged that night. I went unconscious, And when I came to, I was in Dennis's mom's bedroom. And I woke up to Michael on top of me, and he was raping me. I remember he was in my butt, okay, which I never let anyone in that area. And it was so painful that it woke me up out of whatever slumber I was sleeping in. And I was in so much pain, and I was screaming. And I told him to stop. He didn't stop. I started to get scared, and I could not get him off of me. At that moment, I looked up at the bed, because I was on the floor right next to the bed, and I remember because I saw the bed. I looked up, and I saw my daughter Marissa in the bed. I freaked out. I panicked. I was screaming louder. Next thing you know it, the door opens. Dennis, Mike's friend, the house that we were at, Dennis, he opened the door, saw Michael on top of me. He got pissed off, and what did he do? He slammed the door and left us in there. My daughter on the bed and me screaming to stop. He left us in there. After that happened, after the door closed, I was freaking out even more, and I blacked back out. When I came to the next day, my daughter wasn't in the bed, and Michael was nowhere around. And I didn't know what had happened. I thought maybe I dreamt it, but I knew I didn't. I was in a lot of pain. And I remember, too, because it was that time of the month, and I had tampon in. Maybe that's why. Anyway, I went looking for my daughter first to see if she was okay, and she was fine. She was like playing and doing her thing, right? And I went to Dennis and I asked him what had happened. And he said that they were spinning me around in some chair on the porch and asking who it was that I wanted to kiss. And I was like, what? And I go, I don't remember that. And he said that they asked me who it was that I wanted to kiss. Was it Dennis or Michael? Now, subconsciously, I knew Michael longer than I knew Dennis. At least I was more active with Michael than I was with Dennis. It wasn't until years after meeting Dennis that I even sat with him or hung out with him ever. I didn't know that they were best friends. So the rest of the day went on, okay, and I couldn't prove anything. I didn't get any answers, and kind of left it at that. We cleaned up the party and everything. After that happened, Michael started coming back around. One thing led to another. Next thing you know, he's staying at my house. He's begging me to move in. You know, the whole cycle, the whole beginning cycle, you know, the gaslighting and the love bombing and all of this stuff. In the back of my mind, I knew something had happened. But again, when I confronted him about it, he didn't say anything. So I had no proof. And back then, I didn't think about going to the hospital to get checked. So that was the start of my relationship with Jake and Sally's dad. He paid my way to get out of my apartment. He basically persuaded me to move into his house. And that's how I wound up moving in. I had no idea who Michael was. I had never met his kids before. And it was an awkward situation. When I moved in, I remember that Clark was 3 years old. He's my stepson. Madeline, was 6 years old. Marissa, my daughter, was 7. And James, my stepson, was 8. I told them that I was not their mom. They had just lost their mom to suicide a year before, from what I was told. And I explained to them that I had lost my mother as well. It wasn't to suicide, but it was to drinking. And that I didn't want to replace their mother, and that I was there for them. And for a long time, you know, I hung out with the kids. I did homework with them. I cooked dinner. I did all the motherly things that I was doing, you know. But what the kids didn't know in the background was that every day and every night I was basically attacked by Mike. And over time, the sex was basically forced upon me. It didn't matter. If he wanted it, it was, I'm taking it. It didn't matter if I said no. It didn't matter how much I fought him off. It didn't matter. I lived like that for 5 years. Things got really crazy in the house. I remember one time James was not getting ready for school, and Mike came flying around the corner, and he had a bat in his hand. And he would chase James around and threaten him. If he didn't get ready, he would hit him and beat him up or whatever, you know. And I just remember grabbing James when he was running around the corner, and I held on to him and I told him, it's okay. It's okay. I yelled at Mike to stop. I was just like traumatized by what I had seen, you know. So I knew how he was as a father. And I knew how angry he would get if he had to take care of things. So of course, I became the monster. I was the one that had to discipline. I'm the one that had to do everything in the house. James and I butted heads all the time. On top of that, I was dealing with Clark's mother. She was an entertainer as well at Curbs Cabaret. When I first started working in 1998, she was there. She got together with Mike years before me, and she disappeared from the bar, you know, like she just quit going to work. I didn't know that until years later that they had gotten together, and that's where Clark came from. She had a child with Mike as well. So her and I didn't butt heads, but she didn't trust Mike, and there was an open CPS case when I moved in there with Mike and Christina and Clark, and the courts basically ordered Mike with supervised visits. And I had to basically explain to Christina that I was not like Mike, and that I would make sure that Clark was safe and protected if he was over there. It took a while, but mediating between the two of them, you know, eventually she allowed Clark to come over when he was allowed. Christina eventually got mad at me for some reason, and our house had been broken into a couple times. I remember coming home from a ski vacation once, and our house had been broken into, and it was weird because, like, our family picture that we had in a frame was cut out. It was missing. Little weird stuff like that. And I'm thinking, who would do that? Who would cut out our photo and take it? It was of me and the family, you know? And so I thought that was kind of odd. Well, anyway, her and I didn't get along very well. And eventually she wound up getting a protection order or a restraining order against me. And I told Mike, I said, good, now I don't have to deal with her for a year. You know, so I kind of pulled myself out of their little fight and conflict, right? So during that time, over the 5 years that I lived there, I became fucked up, okay? Fucked up. I was drinking heavily, I was taking pain pills, and I was smoking marijuana. Michael saying that he's clean and sober was never sober. He was drinking heavily. He was smoking weed all the time. He was addicted to porn. And it wasn't just any porn. It was barely legal. These young little girls, we're talking black market stuff that I found. Not only in a big bag in the garage, he had a huge bag. I could show you the picture right now. Christina gave it to me. She actually had a picture of that bag. I told her I found that bag and wound up dumping it right in the dumpster when I found it. He has porn all through his office. They had to take the door off the hinges at his office because he wouldn't stop locking himself in there and jacking off to these little girls. Porn addiction, sex addiction. I fought with him all the time about it. I worked with Michael in his dental office for 4 years. So not only did I live with him, but I worked with him. It was like we were inseparable. I could never get a break. About 6 months after I'd moved in is when I got pregnant with Jake. I had Jake. And then not only about 3 months after I had Jake, Mike raped me again. Even though he was told to give me a break, basically, because he was going through prostate cancer. And I remember they did the seed implantation and they told him, don't get near her at all. But that didn't keep him off of me. So not only 3 months later, I found out that I was pregnant with Sally. I had a rough pregnancy. I was going through contractions all the time, to the point where they had to give me a terbutaline pump. I had to stab my leg and apply medicine in my body every day. Twice a day, they had me monitor myself for contractions. Sometimes I'd have 9 or 10 contractions in an hour, and they would make me take more medicine. And that was my second pregnancy. She wanted to come out early. So that is how Sally was born. They're both blessings. I'm very grateful for Jake and Sally. Over the years, I had suspected sexual abuse in the home by not only the father with the kids or with my daughter, but I also suspected sexual abuse going on within the children, within the family. There was a few moments where I'd walked in on them and not busted them, but kind of shocked them. And I suspected it. I confronted it. I talked to Michael about it. But I could never prove it. They called me crazy. My ex said, it's all in your head because you were sexually abused. You know, the whole, I'm innocent thing. For those of you guys that have been through something like this, definitely you can understand what I'm saying here. And this is how we basically lived for 5 years. First time I tried to leave him, I think it was 2-3 years in, he threatened to kill himself. If you leave, I'll kill myself. I got so afraid at that point, I called every one of his family members, all of his kids, and I told them what he said. Next thing you know it, they all showed up at the dental office. They took him in the back room. And they surrounded him and said, what the hell's wrong with you? At that point, I knew that I was not going to get out of there easy. I didn't have my own money except for what I was getting working for him. So I made a plan. And for the next 2 years, I planned my escape. I saved up every dollar that I could. I waited until I had my tax return done, so I would have more money. I got on a bus, which was a 45-minute walk from his house. I got on the bus and went and found myself an apartment Didn't think I was going to get approved. It took 2 months until I got that phone call that said I was approved. I paid them for 2 months' rent, and I had my friends help me with the move. The day that I had all my stuff at the front door, Michael came home, and I looked at him and said, I'm leaving, and all I need is a U-Haul. So he left, and he came back with a U-Haul. He took off for a little while, and within an hour, I had the whole entire U-Haul packed by myself. By the time my friends got there was nothing else to do but leave. And for a while there, I kept him away from my house. For at least 3 months, I said, you're not going to know where I'm living, nothing. And I'm taking the kids. So, in 2011, I called up unemployment and tried telling them about your story on how you needed unemployment from your ex, that you worked for 4 years. But they did approve me for unemployment. I also told him I was going to go after him for child support. And he insisted that he was going to have the kids and all this. And I basically put my foot down and said, no, I'm keeping them 4 days and you have them 3. You're going to pay me child support. Next thing you know, I'm being told that all I get for child support is $550 a month for 2 kids. My rent was like $686 or something. So my friend Billy, who's still active with my kids today, she paid the difference for my rent. I knew something was wrong with that whole child support thing, and it wasn't until almost 7 years later that I was sitting inside Superior Court and I was going over records and I found that child support paper. And I said, well, this isn't true. It said that I was working in the bar making $1,300 a month and blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm sorry, but I wasn't working in the bar. That document was falsified. And on top of it, I never received it. I didn't know that they even had a hearing. So that's how I wound up getting $550 a month. At that point, I still didn't understand how Michael could do that and, what is really going on. How come he has my kids, or whatever. I still to this day don't get it. But that began my story with domestic violence. I'd been sober for about 6 months. And one day, my oldest daughter, Marissa, accused my ex of sexual abuse, and I flipped my squash. At that point, I was on Xanax, and I went down to the street corner, and I bought myself a bottle of alcohol, I guess, because I don't remember doing it. What I do remember is waking up in the hospital with Jake and Sally laying in a hospital bed, and the police officer was there. I didn't know what had happened. I just knew that my daughter and I were fighting. From what I was told, my daughter, Sally, she was 2 years old at the time, was near the door, I guess, when I was fighting with my daughter, and I got mad and I slammed the door, my daughter's door, and Sally's finger got stuck in the door. Now, they tried to say that Sally needed an amputation on her finger. She didn't need that. It was stitches. And I remember that the cops threatened me and said that they were going to arrest me if I didn't calm down and all this stuff, right? And I didn't care. They kept me in the hospital, overnight because I was so fucked up. And DCS, CPS, whatever, got involved at that point. That's when the case got opened for my kids and I. When we went to court for the juvenile records, we, as in Michael and I, discussed the case and what we were going to do to get CPS out of our lives. Now, before that, we'd had CPS at our house 5 different times in less than 6 months because someone called and reported. Someone did. I still, to this day, believe that it was Clark's mom, at least most of it. But either way, DCS got involved. They did take Jake and Sally. They were put in a foster home for a little while, and no one in Michael's family would take Jake and Sally. Billy and Greg, my friends that are still involved with the kids now, they took responsibility. They took care of them. The family did not want anything to do with them. Pretty crazy, huh? In 2011, when the court case came open, I remember that was the first time I met Brian Kimenaw. He is the cousin to Chris Kimenaw, who works in Superior Court as a criminal attorney. His cousin was Brian in the family courts. Now, back then, I still didn't know what kind of connections they had. I didn't know who I was getting involved with, who I was dealing with. I just knew we were there for the kids. I remember one day outside, Brian was talking to Michael about drug testing. And he told Michael to go down to the smoke shop and buy some shampoo stuff that you wash on your body and your hair that is supposed to take off all the toxins and everything, right? It's supposed to clean you out and make it seem like you're clean as a whistle. He told him what drinks to buy. Now I'm sitting here in shock. I'm still, young and naive to all of this stuff going on. And it got so bad inside the courthouse that I remember I did my drug test. It came up that I had marijuana in my system, right? I did my hair tests and all that. I was not hiding anything. Michael walks into the room one day with this test in his hand, and he said, "Here's my test." I guess he paid $150 to have his own test done. Everybody's mouth dropped because it said that he had been clean and sober for a year. He was not clean and sober. Even DCS was shocked because when they do their test, they go back 3 months maybe. But for some reason, Michael's test came out that he was clean for a year. So that did not look good on me. The case was against me. They were attacking my past. They were attacking my case with Marissa when she was younger. That's a whole nother story. So at that point in our case, they basically told me to give up my rights or to lie in court. And at first I thought giving up my rights would be a good thing because I could still control the situation. But then I said, no, I'm not. And I'm not going to lie either. They had Michael on the stand for 4 days. They said, get him off the stand. We're done listening to him. It was a roller coaster of questions with everybody. Lies and more lies. They finally got me on the stand because I told them I have to defend myself. I answered all their questions and was off the stand within 30 minutes. I didn't lie. They closed the case after that. But I had agreed with Michael, if they closed the case, that I would allow the kids to be with him because I thought that I could still see them, that I could have my time with them, that it wasn't the end of the world. At that point, they gave me the final verdict on the case, and I basically got slammed. Supervised visits until further ordered. There was no overnights whatsoever. And that I was a monster. I had no idea that that would happen. Still naive and not understanding what happened, I let things go the way it was because I was court ordered. Next thing you know it, I get a notification from Superior Court that I have court for the kids. First of all, I don't remember the last time DCS ever closed a case, sealed the records, and then gave it over to Superior Court. To this day in history, even that Judge Dardis, I'll never forget that guy. My attorney, Larry G., is friends with Michael. He was my lawyer at the time, and he looked at me and he said, Amber, no matter what, as long as you and Michael are in agreement, it doesn't matter what this court order states. That judge wanted to know how the case got in front of them, and I said, I'd like to know too. He said, I'm not touching it. I don't know how it got here, but that's it. Put his hands up. I've been fighting this case ever since. I'm going to do another video on more of this story, my story, because I'm already 30 minutes in. It's already almost midnight right now. There's other things that I have to tell you about. So I appreciate each and every one of you for watching. Thank you for watching. I really hope that I don't scare you off with my story. And if I do, then you're not meant to be here. If any of you guys have a similar story, please enlighten me, let me know. It's hard to talk about things like this. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to open up about it. But that's why I'm doing this. I've been told to shut my mouth. I've been threatened, harassed, stalked, intimidated to shut my mouth for far too long. There are people that are watching me on here on my YouTube channel still. Maybe even the lawyers. Somehow it gets back to me. Oh, I heard what you said on YouTube. And it's like, well, too bad. The truth is still the truth. And I'm gonna tell the truth. As I told the cops over the years, my story will never change, but theirs will. This is just the beginning of my story, and I'm going to do another part 2 to further explain to you the cycle of domestic violence, what I've been through, and how I've survived it. Thank you for watching.